Let's just jump right into this explainer. For like 25 years, our entire relationship with the internet has been built around one super familiar action: searching. You know the drill. You type in a question, you get a list of websites, and you click on one. But that fundamental habit is undergoing a massive, literally explosive shift right now. We are rapidly moving away from traditional search engines and entering what we're calling the era of ask engines. Now, getting an instant AI-generated answer might feel absolutely magical and convenient for us as users, but behind the scenes, it's quietly creating an existential threat to the open web as we know it. Today, we're going to break down exactly how AI became the internet's new gatekeeper and what actually happens when the web gets consumed without being fed. To really grasp the scale of this, we just have to look at the biggest player in the room. This quote here perfectly captures the vibe from Google's I/O 2026 overhaul, which officially signaled the death of the 10 blue links era. When Elizabeth Reed, Google's head of search, announced that we're entering the era of search agents, she was basically confirming every publisher's worst fear. That trusty old search box, it's totally transformed. It is no longer just a helpful digital signpost pointing you to someone else's website. It's now an AI agent designed to digest the entire web for you, specifically so you stay right there on its own results page. Google itself called this the biggest change to search in a quarter of a century. And honestly, this fundamentally alters how we discover anything online. We're talking about a monumental paradigm shift here. The old era of finding meant scanning those 10 blue links, opening a bunch of tabs, and evaluating the sources yourself. But the new reality is a completely different ballgame. Discovery today isn't about finding websites at all. It's about having a conversation with an AI. You ask a question, the engine synthesizes an answer from dozens of different sources and hands you a neat little summary. It's incredibly efficient. But the catch is, you never actually have to visit the original human source that did the work to provide that information. So, let's look at the numbers behind this shift in Section 1, the brutal AI math. When we dig into the real, hard data, we can see exactly how these AI answers are replacing website visits on a truly staggering scale. According to SEMrush data updated in September 2025, an unbelievable 93% of searches conducted in AI mode end without a single click to an external website. I mean, think about that for a second. Actually, put yourself in the shoes of a business, a journalist, or a creator who relies on organic traffic to keep the lights on. 93 out of 100 people asking a question about your exact field of expertise are getting their answer from the AI and just moving on. They never see your logo, they definitely don't see your ads, and there's no way they're subscribing to your newsletter. And before you think this is just some weird niche phenomenon, it's not. It's a rock-solid trend across the board. Multiple large-scale studies throughout 2025 and 2026 show the exact same thing. Zero-click searches have skyrocketed to 72% of all queries where AI overviews pop up. That means reaching position 1, which has literally been the absolute holy grail of SEO for 2 decades, now earns you less than half the traffic it did back in 2024. Ranking number 1 is honestly starting to feel more like a consolation prize. Which brings us to Section 2, the broken contract. For the last 25 years, the internet ran on a pretty simple handshake agreement. Creators made the content, search engines indexed it, and in exchange, those search engines sent traffic back to the creators. Well, that deal is permanently broken. Just a decade ago, it was a totally fair trade. For every 2 pages a bot crawled on your site, it sent you about 1 visitor back. But generative AI has pushed this dynamic to an apocalyptic extreme. Massive models like ChatGPT will vacuum up 1,500 pages of your hard work to make their answers sound incredibly smart, but they send you essentially 0 visitors in return. It went from a 2-to-1 trade to a 1,500 to 0 ratio. We've never really seen a structural shift like this before. Matthew Prince, the CEO of Cloudflare, bluntly hits the nail on the head here. He says the new business of the internet that is AI-driven doesn't generate traffic. AI scraper companies are basically building a highly profitable gated community. And what's wild is that this community is fed entirely by the open web. The AI platforms are heavily insulated from the messy costs of actually producing content, paying journalists, running servers, doing the ground research, while the original publishers absorb all of those costs, but reap absolutely none of the traffic rewards. And it actually gets even messier when you look at how AI gets its hands on this data. A lot of these companies use what are called immutable archives. A big example is a nonprofit called Common Crawl, which has been basically backing up the web since 2013. The huge problem for publishers is that immutable means the data cannot be truly deleted. Even if a publisher submits a formal takedown request, it's stuck there. This creates a massive backdoor. Chatbots are routinely accessing and training on premium, paywall journalism that was never, ever meant to be free, completely sidestepping licensing fees and publisher boundaries. Okay, so let's look at the real-world fallout in Section 3, the publisher apocalypse. Let's step away from the tech theory for a second, because this is where it hits reality. When the traffic stops, the revenue stops. It's that simple. And the business cost here is absolutely catastrophic. We aren't just tossing around abstract percentages. We are talking about lost jobs and shuttered businesses. HubSpot is looking at a 70 to 80% drop in organic traffic. Chegg reported a 49% decline. Business Insider took a 55% hit to their search traffic, which directly led to cutting 21% of their staff. And DMG Media saw drops as steep as 89% for certain queries. These drops are so brutal that NPR literally described the situation as an extinction-level event for online news publishers. But of course, while traditional publishers are facing an extinction-level event, the companies driving this new era are absolutely exploding. Companies that explicitly position themselves as answer engines, like Perplexity AI, are thriving right now. Just look at this, 780 million queries in 2025 alone. They're growing at a mind-bending 340% year over year. And why wouldn't they? Users, myself included sometimes, just prefer a 2-second synthesized answer over dodging pop-up ads and clicking through 10 different links. Perplexity even lets you compare different AI models on the exact same question, basically becoming a meta platform for AI itself. This shift towards standalone answer engines is so severe that even Google, the undisputed heavyweight king of search, is feeling the heat. Google's market share slipped from 92.9% in 2023 down to 89.6% by mid-2025. Now sure, 89% still sounds huge, but in the world of tech monopolies, that is an earthquake. It is the steepest decline in the company's history, and it perfectly explains why Google is frantically racing to turn its own search into an AI agent, even if it means cannibalizing the very web ecosystem it helped build. They have no choice but to compete with platforms like Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Claude. So where do we go from here? Section 4. Can the web survive? With publishers projected to lose over 40% of their search traffic to AI by 2026, we really have to look at how creators are fighting back, because the ecosystem is rapidly closing in on them. To survive against platforms that are basically siphoning their value, publishers are executing 3 crucial pivots. First, they are leaning hard into unique content that AI can't just scrape and replicate easily. Stuff like deeply reported investigative journalism, diverse video formats, and tight community-driven content. Second, since ad revenue is in freefall, they have to build new monetization streams, like direct subscriptions or forcing actual paid partnerships with AI companies. And third, they are fighting for collective bargaining and pushing for regulations that would force AI systems to actually attribute and compensate the original sources. Because honestly, if they don't pull this off, we are staring down a very strange future. We are watching the rise of a brand new internet, a gated ecosystem where a handful of AI companies consume everything, answer everything, and owe the original creators absolutely nothing. Which leaves us with one massive pivotal question to end on. If AI consumes the web without feeding it, who is actually going to create tomorrow's content? If the traffic stops, the funding stops. And if the funding stops, the journalism, the research, and the human creativity that these incredibly smart AIs train on will just dry up. The Ask Engine era is absolutely here, but it is entirely up to us whether the open web survives the transition.